my name is Leah. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have some books to share with you and I'm very excited to now own these. This is kind of an amalgamation book haul. Most of these were books I got for Christmas or purchased for myself with Christmas money, but there's a couple that I haven't read yet, so they haven't been in my wrap-up videos in the past that I did buy. So they just like haven't been featured on the channel yet, and I wanted to just kind of be like, hey, I own this book and I'm excited to read it even though I haven't yet. I don't know. That's the vibe we're going for here. So the first one is one of those books that I haven't read yet and I bought like months ago, but that is These Violent Delights by Gong. There's not much to say about this one because, you know, it's been making the rounds. It has made the rounds. Like, I feel like everyone's already read this and I'm just like super way behind. The second book is already out, I think. I've heard a ton of great things about it and so I'm super excited to jump in. I did actually start. I got like 50 pages in, I think. Let's see. 39 pages in. I don't really remember why I set it down. It wasn't because I didn't like it. It was because, I don't know, I think I had stuff going on or like I just felt like reading something else. I've discovered that I'm very much a mood reader. If I'm just not in the mood to read something, I just simply will not, and that's why my TBR list is always growing. For those of you who don't know, These Violent Delights is a historical fantasy set in 1920s Shanghai, and it's also a Romeo and Juliet retelling. So the two families of Romeo and Juliet, the Montagues and the Capulets, they're basically rival gangs in 1920s Shanghai. I think the Capulets are the Scarlet Gang, and then the Montague equivalent is the White Flowers. There's basically this like dark and mysterious monster that awakens in the prologue. I didn't really get to anything beyond that, but I'm assuming they have to fight the dark and mysterious monster. I've also seen, and I think I follow Gong on Twitter, I'm not really sure, but I've seen her on the internet and, you know, I just love her vibes. Her presence is so funny. Apparently there's like hidden Taylor Swift lyrics in this, so I'm just like all about all of that, like the subtle references to things you like in your book that have nothing to do with the book itself. But These Violent Delights, I'm very excited to jump into it. Yes. The next book I have to share is also one that I bought a while ago. I think this one was in July, but it is Dune by Herbert. I think it's pretty obvious why I bought this one. The movie was coming out and I have not in fact read the book. I didn't plan on reading the book before I saw the movie, because I just wasn't gonna have, well, I definitely was gonna have the time. It was just a decision I made. I've also heard that this is a pretty, not necessarily dense read, but just a slow read, and because of that, I knew it was the type of book that I would be okay with seeing the adaptation first and then reading it. Because I feel like there's some books, especially classics, in my opinion, that you just kind of need to see that more modern pace to the story and see the visuals to everything in order to have a better experience with the book itself. Okay, maybe need is not the word, because you don't need an adaptation to appreciate the classic work of literature. But for me personally, having seen the adaptation, I know it's going to enhance my experience of this book, and so that's why I wanted to see it first. I'm not planning to wait until the second movie comes out, because the second movie I think is like the second half of this book. I'm pretty sure they divided it into a part 1 and part 2 of the adaptation, so I'm not planning on waiting for the second movie, but if I do wait, I again won't be upset with it. So I don't like have a sense of urgency in getting to this book, but I know I do want to read it at some point. Having read mostly modern sci-fi, it's really funny seeing a sci-fi main character named Paul. That's a good one. And his mom being like Jessica. It's humorous to me. The next book I have to show off is one that I bought myself for Christmas, and that is The Marionettes by Wismer. Katie is a self-publishing author, and she actually does have a YouTube channel, so I will link her down below. I read her book, The Anti-Relationship Year, this past year, and absolutely loved it, so I know that I love her writing style, and that's what prompted me to buy the physical version of this one, because I read The Anti-Relationship Year as an ebook. This is the first book in her upcoming series. It is a fantasy boarding school vampire romance, which I'm all here for. I actually can't remember what age category this is. It's either new adult or adult. I'm pretty sure it's not young adult because I know it's supposed to get darker in later books as well. But basically, this book follows Valerie Darkmoor, who is a witch initiating into a group called the Marionettes, which is a group of witches dedicated to serving vampires. On the back, it says she is one of the last remaining blood witches. I don't know what that means, but it sounds cool. There's sabotage, there's competition, so it's like boarding school slash also tournament, not in the sense of it being a tournament, but in the sense of there are only a limited amount of spots that people are kind of competing for. I'm very excited to jump into this one. I know the second book, Wicked Souls, is out already. It came out in December, and then I believe the third book, I think it's called Blood Ties, is coming out in 2022. I'm unsure how many books there are planned to be in the series, so like I've mentioned before, I don't really jump into series until at least a few books have been released from them, just so that I like have things to pick up afterwards. I really like binging series, and I'm really glad I didn't pick this up on release because I've been told, or I've heard, that there is a cliffhanger ending to this one and book 2. So we're definitely going to be waiting until book 3 comes out to read this. Well, I don't know. I really want to read it, but I might force myself to wait until book 3 comes out to read it. The fourth book I have to show you today is Into the Woods by John Yorke. This is a writing book specifically about screenwriting for TV and television. Movies and television. But he makes it very clear when starting out that this is more about story and the form of story that can be applied then to any medium, whether it be books, playwriting, other things. I'm trying to think of other forms of media, but my mind is going blank. What this book is attempting to do is to kind of get down to the nitty-gritty of the form of story by looking beyond some of the typical story structure stuff that a lot of writing books talk about. He's not saying that he's not being critical of those things. He's not saying that you should just throw out 3-act structure. That's not going to help you because you need to do it this way. He's basically saying that 3-act structure exists for a reason. The hero's journey exists for a reason. Save the cat exists for a reason. All of that kind of stuff. He's saying they're all kind of like indicative of the same core form that story has. Specifically, what he ultimately divides it out to is the 5-act structure. There's this handy dandy graph at the back, which, you know, I love a good graph. And it kind of just like compares all the different types of like story structure things and methods that people have written. So we've got Terence Freitag, Vladimir Propp, Joseph Campbell, Maureen Murdoch, Sid Field, Vogler, Blake Snyder, John Cherubi, Frank Daniel, Linda R. Aronson, Christopher Booker, Michael Hueg. I probably pronounced some of those names wrong, but it's like a good visual representation of like all of these different methods and how they kind of all align in a very similar way, which I'm all here for visuals as a visual person. I've started reading it. I'm about 80 pages in and I'm really enjoying it so far. I've been wanting to read this one for a while, so I'm excited to finally have it in my possession and continue on. I'll probably be able to tell you more about it in a later wrap-up, or probably I'll be making another writing craft book review video at some point in 2022 as well. So you'll get more detail about this one later. The next 2 books I have to show you, I got during that 50% off hardcover sale at Barnes & Noble. We love that. The first one is one that I have started reading, and that is Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. This was available at my library as an audiobook, and I just like was browsing and randomly just kind of selected it to read. I had heard of it, of course, and I've seen Margaret Owen on Twitter a lot, but I just like hadn't actually learned what it was about and wanted to pick it up. But I just happened to see it and was like, that sounds interesting, I'll read it. So I got through the first like chapter-ish as an audiobook and then got busy and let my hold thing expire, so I did not have access to it anymore. But when the sale happened, I liked enough about the first chapter to be like, okay, I want to own this book. So I just went ahead and bought it at Barnes & Noble. Essentially, this book is about a jewel thief whose parents are the gods Fortune and Death, and she essentially needs to pay them back for raising her. And so the way that she does that is she decides to be a jewel thief and uses an enchanted necklace in order to masquerade as the Princess Giselle. So she infiltrates parties, goes through these heists to collect and steal jewels in order to repay her debt to Fortune and Death, and I hadn't actually got to that part yet. But in the front cover it says, she crosses the wrong god and is cursed to an untimely end, turning into jewels stone by stone for her greed. So essentially she has to figure out how to break the curse, figure out how to pay her debt, and that's the book. She needs to survive, and I'm very excited to read it. I did a really bad job of describing that. What really hooked me whenever I was listening to the audiobook was just, I don't know, the very rich world and also voice of the character. It was a very voicey start to the book. Like, you can tell this girl's got some spunk. And it comes through in the narrative, like, really well. So I'm excited to continue reading this, and you'll be seeing it at some point in a wrap-up in 2022 for sure. And then the last book was the other book that I bought during the hardcover sale, and that is The Ones We're Meant to Find by Joan. This is a young adult sci-fi in a climate-ravaged future, according to Lauren James. I don't read a ton of sci-fi, but I really wanted to pick this one up because it sounded really interesting, and I know I've seen it around. Like, I've seen people talk about it, and so I figured it was good. But basically, this book, I believe, is dual POV. One of the points of view is a girl named C who is woken up on an abandoned island and has no idea who she is. She has no memories. Oh, but she does remember one thing, that she does have a sister, and so she's trying to escape the island in order to find her sister. And then the other point of view is a girl named Casey who, I believe she's like a STEM student or something, and is kind of like rejecting science because of the way that it's been misused and taken advantage of in the excuse of protecting the planet, but ultimately harming it and benefiting the people who are employing science. This different science. There's like these eco-habitat cities or something like that. I'm unsure exactly how that all plays out, but essentially other people's exploitation of science and the environment has kind of turned her bitter towards her field of study. And so she's kind of trying to get out of that, but then after a series of man-made disasters rock the planet, Casey must decide if she's ready to use science to help humanity, even though it failed the people who mattered most to her. It hasn't really been something that's been on my, like, TBR to buy or to buy list, but I saw it in Barnes & Noble, picked it up, read the summary, and I just thought it sounded really interesting. And this is probably one of the first just, like, vague interest buys that I've had in a while. My purchasing habits in the past have been very much, I like this author, I will buy their book, and a lot less going into Barnes & Noble just to browse books. So I'm excited to give this one a shot and see how I like it. But those are all the books that I had to share with you today. Let me know if you have read any of these, how you liked them. Obviously no spoilers because I have not read these books yet, but I would love to hear how you enjoyed or disliked any of these. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again soon. Bye!